truth is that I wouldn't have survived very long if I didn't have fear. You need fear. Fear is very useful. It keeps you aware, keeps you alert. And furthermore, I wouldn't have lasted very long if I really was tough. I was one of those curious little children who just wanted to explore the world, and that started with fossil hunting along the coast of Dorset. But I think the problem was, although I recognised I was some sort of explorer, or I wanted to be, I didn't know how I was going to do it. But there was something that made all the difference, and that was that my dad was a test pilot, and he used to fly these planes over our house. And I remember once he tipped the wings of this extraordinary, charismatic plane, the Vulcan bomber. I thought, wow, my dad is flying these amazing aircraft. It just reassured me somehow, made me believe it's possible, even in this day and age, to be some sort of explorer. He was someone who was pushing his own limits in the sky, testing these extraordinary aircraft. But I thought, wow, I can do my own thing, follow my own dream. And I clung on to this dream of being some sort of explorer. And eventually I managed to pull it off, but it wasn't all that easy. But still, it was something I always really wanted to do from the age of 10 or 11. I didn't have any money when I had this dream of being an explorer. And I thought, how am I going to do it? And my mum said, why don't you just work in the local warehouse, because the job was advertised. So I did that, and I got myself just enough money to get myself to South America. And at last I was there in the Amazon, this place I've been dreaming of ever since a little boy. And it was absolutely terrible. I mean, this was meant to be the most wonderful place, and it was a place of course, all the things I have been scared of, like snakes and spiders and scorpions, but it's also somewhere I found myself being attacked in. I was attacked by 2 gold miners who were drunk in the night, and they chased me with knives, and I jumped into my canoe capsized, I lost everything. So it was a bad start to a career of being an explorer, but it made me reassess how I was going to pull this off, this crazy profession of being a discoverer of the remote world. And I thought, if I'm going to survive, then I've got to turn to the people who are the experts. So I swam ashore without any of the things that were necessary really for me to stay alive, and I crawled out of the forest, eventually emerged, very, very ill, half dead really. But I thought, I've got to come to terms with this forest. And so I turned to the local people who saw the forest not as a threat, but as a home. It gave them their food, their medicine, their shelter. I thought, this is amazing. So it was very practical at first. So I thought, turn to the local people, because they can help you, and they don't have any money either. I mean, just like me. I thought, that's brilliant. But it also began to strike me that this is the right way of being an explorer. Exploration it's been full of imperialism through the centuries, and a lot of the great explorers have been wonderful people, but they were also always really imposing with their will, with their idea of the world, and advancing our civilization, you could say, perhaps. So there's been a lot of this imposition from the outside world. And I thought, what about the local people's point of view? And I had read environmental science at university, so I wanted to understand the environment as seen by the local people, and that's what I did. I went through an initiation ceremony to become a man as strong as a crocodile in New Guinea, and that was simply really because I thought I should do whatever it takes. And certainly the local people thought that. I mean, they said, look, if you want to be an explorer, you've got to be like us. You've got to, for us to explore our world, it takes a lot. And unfortunately, from their point of view, it meant going through the ceremony, being hidden away for as long as it took to become a man as strong as a crocodile, which took 6 weeks. So it was really, really tough. We were scarred up and down our chest and back with little crocodile marks, again and again cut with bamboo blades. And that was just the beginning, because we now had to earn those marks. And so I was beaten every day, 5 times a day, for 6 weeks, along with the other people my age of the Nyara community that I was living in. So that was really the start of my thinking, my philosophy, really, that I should do it on local people's terms. And from then on, I went on other expeditions, always doing it the same way, and trying to make a virtue, really, of being vulnerable, trying to allow myself to be open to whatever was out there, rather than coming in like Indiana Jones, instead sitting, listening, doing whatever it took for the locals to survive. I was in Papua New Guinea simply because, as a young man, I had this feeling that I should do whatever it took for the locals to survive. And so I'd gone through this traditional initiation ceremony to become a man as strong as a crocodile. But the ceremony was a preparation for the local people, but also for me. For me, it was about learning my strengths and weaknesses, and I certainly did that during 6 weeks of being beaten and being made a man as strong as a crocodile. But for the local people, it was about exploring their world. So from that community, I headed off into the interior of Papua New Guinea and thought, I've got to put into practice this experience I've had and carry on now at a sort of higher level of being some sort of explorer. I wasn't, well, I was still very much an outsider, but I was very aware that I couldn't stay forever within that tight tribal community, and it was now time to head off into the interior. And I was also very aware that communities and environments were being destroyed. They're falling apart. There were loggers there were gold miners, and I began to hear about a very remote community called the Yaifo, and I wanted to try and record their last days of living on a mountain as the gold miners moved in. There's a huge sort of gold rush, and I thought, if I just record something of these people's existence in the last days before the gold miners sort of piled in, then it'd be a worthwhile expedition. And that's what I did. Found a very remote community, the Yaifo, and in fact it started very unfortunately. They sprung out, they ambushed me. The Yaifo thought I was a gold miner, and it was terrifying, frankly. I climbed up this mountain, but they leapt out covered in paint with bows and arrows, all ready to get me and my fellow people on this little expedition, just local people. And then they felt sorry for us after a while. They realized that we were just standing there terrified as they were slapping their bows and arrows, getting ready to kill us. They thought, these aren't gold miners, they're just mad people who've come up the mountain. And it was the start of I suppose you could say it's the start of a beautiful relationship. The Yaifo settled down and began telling us about their lives, me and, as I say, a few local people. And gradually I recorded a bit of the life of the Yaifo. And then, an extraordinary thing, one man called Korsai took me over the mountain to safety. Gold miners piling in still, and there was one way out, essentially, without getting involved with the gold miners down in the lowlands, which was to climb over the mountain. But this was an extraordinary act, because the mountain was, it was terrible. I mean, it was freezing cold, unmapped, because it was permanent cloud cover, and he did this very brave thing of trying to find a route over this mountain. He had never done this journey before. It wasn't certain anyone had ever crossed this range, and he, without any clothes, he just had leaves front and back. He managed to find a way over this mountain, a great risk to himself, and I remember we had to stop along the way and light up little fires to warm up his feet, because his feet couldn't feel his feet. He kept on saying, my feet are dying, my feet are dying. So he warmed up his feet again, we went up and up, slept in caves, finally got over the mountain. So it's a very special experience. And through the years I thought back to the Yaifo, wondered what had happened to them. And eventually, a generation later, 20 or so years later, I decided I've got to find out if the Yaifo is still okay. Did they survive, those gold miners? I've been called these things: television's most fearless man by the Radio Times, a man as strong as a crocodile. That was because of the ceremony I've been through, a local initiation ceremony. But the truth is that I wouldn't have survived very long if I didn't have fear. You need fear. Fear is very useful. It keeps you aware, keeps you alert. And furthermore, I wouldn't have lasted very long if I really was tough, weirdly. Because if you're vulnerable, if you allow yourself to be someone who isn't powerful physically, then people will look after you, they take you in. And I realized very quickly in my career that really what I've got to do is be more like a child, not Indiana Jones thumping through with a machete or a whip, but just quietly listening, because in fact I'd often be put with children because they knew so much in indigenous communities, whether in the rainforest or desert or the Arctic. They had such a level of skills, but I suppose more to the point, if I had gone in there in an assertive way, then I really would have been seen as a threat. And bearing in mind so many of these indigenous communities who've taught me so much have been so threatened by the outside world, I thought what I've got to try and do is sort of open myself up. And I remember I did this journey with camels up the Namib Desert, and that was a very special thing. No one had been allowed to go the complete length of the Namib because it's covered in diamonds, apart from anything else. And at the end of that, I sort of kept on thinking. I was alone in the desert a long time, and I kept on thinking, to me, really, exploration is not about conquering nature or, I suppose, going somewhere in order to make your mark, planting flags and so on. It's about almost the opposite of that. It's about opening yourself up, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and letting the place make its mark on you. And that's really my philosophy in a nutshell. It's about not imposing, but allowing the place to impose on yourself so that you come back and tell the story in a sensitive way. And yes, I have been very vulnerable. I'm someone who's been shot at. Pablo Escobar's people in the Amazon chased me up a river. I've been robbed, left to die, also in the Amazon. Some gold miners took my bags. We were crossing a river, and we all crossed. Well, two gold miners crossed this pole in the river, this little bridge we'd made, and they turned around, kicked that pole, that tree away, and it sort of left me there. This has happened again and again. I lost my dogs in the Arctic in a blizzard, a whiteout. But each of these experiences have taught me so much. I think I've been quite lucky to get away with it. I'm known as someone who's almost died 9 times. But the fact of the matter is I haven't died. And I suppose for me, and I think this is incredibly important for me to try and communicate to any audience. Yes, I'm someone who's said to have died almost 9 times. Or rather, I should say that again. It's really important for me to say to any audience that I address that, yes, I'm seen as a television's most fearless man or someone who's almost died 9 times. But the fact of the matter is I haven't died, and it's about something totally different what I do. It's not about whether you nearly died or not. It's about the opposite of that. It's about how much you live. And I think that's so true for any of us. I'm seen as an explorer, someone who heads off into the middle of the world. I'm sort of classic, one of the last of the sort of classic explorers who just heads out without a GPS or anything, no sort of backup. But I think it's so important that all of us feel that exploration is, it's something we all do. It's part of our personality, it's part of our makeup as human beings. We're all curious about the world. We all push ourselves in different ways in life. And we all have this sort of exploring instinct to discover the world on our own terms. So exploration needn't be about the past, you know, Sir Walter Raleigh or David Livingstone or Robert Scott of the Antarctic. To me, exploration is about the present and it's about the future. So I try and persuade audiences or anyone I talk to of this, and especially children. I want children to believe they too are explorers. What's hard for me is that I go out, and it's true, it's what I choose to do, so I don't complain about it, but it's very hard to adjust to coming back. I'd be away, out of contact with my family, with my people, culture, for maybe 6 months at a time, and it's very difficult to adjust to reality. I become a sort of professional survivor, but in the end, I need to be normal, because otherwise I'll just go bonkers, you know. I have to come back, and I think it's my family that keeps me grounded, that keeps me aware of who I really am. It's very easy to get caught up in this idea of being sort of an explorer, someone who doesn't die on perilous adventures. And the threats would be very real, because I don't have backup, I don't have GPS, I don't have a lot of the stuff that adventurers have. But nonetheless, I've sort of pulled through. And the way I've pulled through is partly skills, but in the end it's also about reassessing myself. Every time I come back, I'm just a dad again. I'm just someone with 3 children who has responsibilities at home, and it's very important just to realise, yes, everyone's mortal, yes, everyone's got other responsibilities, not just to expeditions or to the environment or other things that occur on a journey, but back home to people who care about me and who I care about. I suppose not so many people have had a sort of international rescue mission launched on their behalf, and it's something I ponder about quite a lot. What happened out there? Why did it happen? I mean, obviously, at a professional level, I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I think in the end, this extraordinary experience of being international news day after day, that I had disappeared in the highlands of New Guinea, I think what it did was remind me that in the end, although my expeditions are lone affairs in a way I head off, actually it was friends that made all the difference. 2 lots of friends. The friends who I've made locally, the people who got a message to the outside world that I had malaria, I had dengue fever, that I was in trouble because I was cut off with warring factions who blocked my way to the outside world. So 3 lots of local people set off to send a message out, trying to find a radio out there to tell the world that I was in trouble. And then the other lot of friends who came to my aid, and they were the people back here in the West. Daily Mail newspaper, my agent Joe Sarsby, my family, all of these people worrying about me. And it was very, very touching, and it was a real reminder that I'm not alone out there. No one really is ever alone. We can feel very lonely, whether you're an explorer who's up against it in the rainforest because you've got terrible fevers, or you've been attacked by something or other, or back in Bristol or the rest of the world. We can all feel very, very lonely. But there are people out there who want to lend a hand. And not just in my case. I think that humans are actually very, very kind. Time and time again, I've come across remote people who've just extended a helping hand. And I found the same here back in the West. People are much more friendly than we think. So many people are willing you on. I'm hoping those who kindly come and see my film, this premiere, and also see me, will be thrilled, excited, intrigued. They'll learn something about one of the remotest places on the planet and the struggle of someone, me, to try and get through this place and come back alive. But above all, they'll all come away feeling optimistic about the world and about themselves, that actually we all have extraordinary potential within us to do extraordinary things, but also that we all are explorers. And you don't need to go all the way to Papua New Guinea to believe that or to discover things. Just venture into your back garden or local park, and there's a whole world out there that's new to yourself and probably new to science. I mean, it's extraordinary how little we know. We've only identified something like 8% of the species on our planet. And we think of exploration as belonging to another era. It isn't. So I want to tell children, I want to tell adults, it's never too late and never too early to begin exploring our world. And never has it been more important, because, as we know, our planet is, so many ecosystems are under threat around the world. And there's global heating, global warming, climate emergency, and so on. So it's urgent, and it's all within our power to go out there and discover the beauty of our precious planet. I think that whatever profession, whatever role you have in life, it's within your power to do extraordinary things. And yes, I passionately believe we all are explorers, but I still think a lot of people think, oh, it can't really be true, and I'm not physically fit enough, I can't get away because I'm caring for someone in my home. And so a lot of us come up with reasons for not heading out. But I think it's just incredibly important to believe that there's a world out there. And if you can't get out yourself, encourage others to explore. And yeah, I just think it's also very important to remember you don't need to go off into the middle of nowhere. The world is extraordinary right around us. And so even exploring your street, exploring on the internet, these are all important aspects of exploration. And so I think don't limit yourself. Don't think, oh, I'm not like Indiana Jones, I'm not like Benedict Allen or one of these people who goes off and risks their life. I do it because it's my skill set now. And I read environmental science and then ecology at university because that was my passion. But we all have passions, and I think it's important not to limit yourself and think, I can't do that. We can do extraordinary things.